So over the last couple of days, I finished the first season of Yellow Jackets, and I really enjoyed that series. I heard it was about cannibals, and I thought I knew what I was getting into. I did not. That tells you very little. But that's not what this is about. What this is about is me falling in love with Sophie Thatcher in that show, causing me to finally getting around to a movie that I had been, meaning to watch for a long time, which was Companion. Now, maybe when I learned about the movie originally, I knew what it was about. But by the time I got around to watching it, I did not know what it was about. I had forgotten. I only knew that it had Sophie Thatcher, my new celebrity crush, and Jack Quaid, my guy, right? Okay. That's all I knew going in. So I was pleasantly surprised by everything that happened in the movie. Um, I overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. But, thinking about it after having finished it, I guess my issue with it is I feel like it doesn't really do or say anything meaningful or of substance that hasn't already been done or said a million times, and specifically by like Ex Machina. This movie is literally just Ex Machina in current year. That's all it is. And that's a little disappointing because as I think about it, Ex Machina, um, its premise and its scope did not demand more. Although the end of Ex Machina suggested perhaps there could be, maybe, right? Um, but in this movie, the premise is, and this is full spoilers, that the world, like sex bots are just normal. Companion robots are normal. Lots of people, maybe everyone, has a companion robot. Okay, they're very advanced. They're indistinguishable from people. They don't even know that they're robots. Okay, and the movie really doesn't do anything with this because its premise is when I went into the movie, actually the first thing I thought was, is this just Ready or Not again? And I didn't like that movie. I don't know why everyone likes that movie so much. Um, and then I realized, no, this is just Ex Machina. And I don't think that those are favorable comparisons when it had an opportunity to do so much more. Because basically, this is another movie of, you know, male scientist bad, uh, female robot good, and also uh, AI gains sentience, right? These are not new, exciting themes or concepts. They're really not. They're very boring and played out. But where I thought the movie might go for a period of time was to have a more interesting, actual, nuanced discussion about gender and dating politics today. And the movie alludes to that, but it does not explore it at all. And it, by the end, undermines that premise entirely in order to go 100% balls to the wall, male scientist bad, female robot good, and also robot gains, free will and sentience, right? So the interesting thing that it had, it chose not to explore. And I think that's where my disappointment with the movie lies. Because for the bulk of the movie, Jack Quaid's character is clearly not a paragon. He's not like, you know, Superman. Okay. He's not a Boy Scout. But he's also not just an outright villain. Okay. Even when they introduce the premise of the plot, where he and his friend, his female friend, by the way, um, plotted to kill this rich Russian friend of theirs who she was sleeping with to get access to his money, which was an absurd amount of money. They plotted to kill him, and he was under the impression that he was a Russian gangster, and so killing him wasn't exactly the worst thing in the world. And in the third act, it's revealed, oh, actually, he wasn't a Russian gangster. You just assumed that, and I never corrected you, right? And interestingly, at that point, the plot pivots, where Jack Quaid's character had, again, not been entirely a scumbag, but just devolves into complete villainy. And any attempt to have an interesting discussion, which he kind of attempts to at the dinner scene, but by then he had just like lost all credibility and had just become like an incel stereotype, basically. Um, it chose not to do anything with this, and I feel like that's a big failing here. If this movie, if this got a sequel, I would really want it to explore the dynamics of what will likely be our immediate future. Sometime in the next 50 years, this is going to happen, right? Why, and they allude to all of this. Why is this such a thriving industry? Why do so many men feel a need to involve themselves in it? How do those different people view these robots, these companions? Because again, there's alluded that there's different perspectives on this. You know, by the end, Jack Quaid's character is just the worst kind of douchebag about it. But then there's also his friend who seems to have a real, genuine love for his companion robot. And also the guy at the end who we don't see this really. It's kind of told to us, not shown to us, that he's a decent guy. And so he just gives her free will, right? But again, we don't do anything with that. And what we also don't see is, do women use these at all? Like, how does that work? I feel like the dynamics around how and why people use these robots is not taken advantage of. Instead, it's just devolved into, you know, an easily digestible Hollywood comedy. And so maybe it's just a victim of everything in Hollywood needing to make money. But it seems like there were almost two different movies here because, again, as far as I could tell, Jack Quaid's character was not evil throughout the entire movie. He was just a kind of a complex guy. But by the end, he was. And so there was no longer any even attempt to have an interesting discussion. It's just, no, he's a douchebag, and probably most of the people using these are douchebags, and yeah, maybe, you know, maybe we'll do iRobot later, right? Or maybe we'll do Detroit Become Human later, or some kind of crazy shit like that. I don't know. That seems disappointing to me because I feel like there is a really interesting discussion to be had that you can explore in science fiction, and that's what the whole fucking point is. If we are at a place where the world needs this and so many people feel as though they need it and want it, what does that say about people in society? And if the answer that you come up with is, well, men are just pigs, you're really not thinking about this that hard. And in fact, I'd argue you're part of the problem. And so my concern is that this movie not only doesn't have anything interesting to say, at this point, it's almost counterproductive. If you take it seriously, right? If you take the main message here, I think it's a harmful message, right? That the only reason that people would want this or need this is because they're insecure, they're petty, you know, they're all kinds of things that just are not true. And again, I feel like the movie probably, I'd be interested to see if there's another cut of this movie, because with the establishment of Kat as a character who is literally just like a person who is using this rich dude for his money and identifies herself as an accessory, right? And maybe that was just her saying that in order to make fun of Iris when she didn't even realize. And then to have this other character who is genuinely in love with his robot and to have Jack Quaid character be more complex than just a villain throughout most of the movie and then pivot hard in that final act. It seems like the story wanted to do something more interesting than it ultimately did. And I find that a little disappointing. And that's kind of, unfortunately where I end up coming away from the movie is that while I enjoyed watching it and I was interested watching it, I'm a little bit disappointed coming away from it because I feel like there was so much more that it could have done or said and explored. And I guess my only hope is that, it can get a sequel to explore this world that they've established here. Like, what is this world like, if this became kind of a movie version of Detroit Become Human with good writing and good characters, that would be pretty nice. I would appreciate that. But for the moment, I can recommend the movie as a fun thing to watch. It is quite funny. It's a funny horror sci-fi movie, right? But ultimately, it is just a worse version of things that already exist, peddling the same message that we've all heard a million times, and failing to actually engage with the unique material that it could have and seemed like it was going to engage with for a period of time. I just wanted to get my thoughts on that out there, just because I kind of had them bouncing around in my head after watching them.